Welcome to Power Boat Talk, the podcast where we talk everything performance boats with your host, Joe Road.
Hello, welcome to Power Boat Talk. This episode is brought to you by BoatLoanGuy.com and owner Scott Angle. Scott will do his best to make your boat or RV purchase as quick and as stress-free as possible. Scott offers loans for as low as $20,000 and up to $5 million, which should be enough to take care of that boat of your dreams. He offers loans for as long as 20 years, and oftentimes he'll give you a same-day approval on no-doc loans. Scott guarantees the best rates in the industry. Follow Scott on Instagram and Facebook at RV and Boat Loans, or go to BoatLoanGuy.com for more information or to fill out an application. This episode is brought to you by SoCal Jet Boats with owners Brad and Brittany Martin. I had the pleasure of having Brad on episode 28 of Powerboat Talk, so go check that out. SoCal Jet Boats was one of the original online forums and is still a great resource for all kinds of performance boat info. SoCal Jet Boats also has an online store that has a fantastic selection of hot boat apparel and a full line of jet pump parts and accessories. SoCal Jet Boats is also a great supporter of boat racing out here on the West Coast, and you can find them at most ADBA and NJBA drag boat races and the Southern California Speedboat Club Circle Boat races. You can also find them on one of the stops on their California River Summer Tour, which is going on now. Follow SoCal Jet Boats on Instagram and Facebook, or go to SoCalJetBoats.com for more information. Today I have with me Keith Eickert, and I don't know if there's a more prominent, well-known builder of high-performance marine engines than Keith, and I'm really lucky to have him on today. And so Keith, thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it. How are things today?
Oh, everything's a good day. Every day's a good day.
Yeah. So what are you up to these days? I mean, obviously I've got connected with you through a friend who you just built him a couple engines. So I guess you're still doing stuff.
I'm still doing stuff, Joe. I'm doing it on a very limited basis. Obviously, I'm not in a position where I can work 12, 16 hours a day anymore. And so I try to schedule whatever work I do take that's not going to create a problem for myself or a customer. So we do, when I take a job in, I do one day at a time, and when the job's done, it's done, and don't call me until it's done. So
That's nice. That's got to be a nice pace after years of building so many engines.
yeah, it's well, and I'm one person now, so I don't have any helpers. I don't have anybody to disassemble engines or clean parts or do anything like that. I'm just one person now. So, and for me, that's worked out real well.
Yeah, you enjoy that?
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now, and I got, I'm building two engines right now, one for a customer in Oklahoma, and the second engine that I'm building right now is for my daughter because she wants to build a hot rod. So we're gonna build an engine together.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah. What kind of hot rod?
Well, we don't know yet. We're gonna worry about getting the engine done. Because that's my thing, and I want to have that done before I go. So what she does with it after the engine's done, if I'm still here to help her, fine. If I'm not, it's up to her.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you still got a lot of years left in you, man.
Well, I'm hoping. So. Well, I say I'm hoping, but and maybe I shouldn't say this, but the way our country's going, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's that.
Well,
And it's been a long and a very rewarding career for me. I started working for Mercury Marine in 1972, and I started working for Mercury just shortly after PK for Mercury sold to Mercury Marine. because originally it was Kiefer's business,
Mm-hmm.
and he sold it to Mercury Marine, and then Carl went across the lake and opened up Kiefer Aero Marine, and that's where the number 6 drive came from.
Uh-huh.
So, but anyway, I was very privileged to know Carl, and he was always my I don't want to say hero, but he was my guy that I looked up to, and I appreciated what he did in his life, and I would just wanted to do something like that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever read the book. There's a guy that did a book on him.
Okay.
And Carl, I just finished reading it a couple weeks ago, and I've been in the marine industry my whole life. I wish I would have read it 20 years ago because I had no idea all this stuff. It's pretty unbelievable. He was pretty amazing guy. All the stuff he did.
Oh, he was absolutely amazing, and actually, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but when I had KS&W in St. Augustine, we actually had a race in his honor. It was called the Kiefer St. Augustine Classic.
Oh,
and
nice.
And it was amazing. All the people through his career showed up for the event, and there was a lots of very, very good people involved with him. So, but and he was I had the privilege of having Carl Kiefer eat dinner at my house.
Oh, nice. How did you end up at Mercury Marine? How'd that happen?
Well, a friend of mine that I went all the way through school with, all grade school, middle school, high school, Gary Garbrecht. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
ever.
Heard the name.
Okay. Gary Garbrecht Gary lived a block down the road from me.
Oh, my gosh.
And so obviously we were, we hung out together and whatever. Well, as the years went by, I went in the service, I did my Army, I did my, this and that and the other thing. And then in 1972, he contacted me and wanted to know if I would like to go to work for Mercury. And I was kind of honored by that. And I said, of course I would. So, but, and he was in charge of all of Mercury Racing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, knowing him like I knew him, it was just a great opportunity for me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And I went. Now I will say my career in Mercury was relatively short-lived. I was only there until '76 because the opportunity came along for me to move to Florida and build engines for a couple race teams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. And one of them was Rocky Aoki, the Benihana boat.
Oh, nice.
And the other one was Preston Hen with the natural light boat. And so that's how I started on my own career. Mm-hmm. Is working for those two guys.
Let me go back though. Before you went to Mercury, were you building motors, or how, growing up? What got you into?
Growing up, if you believe it or not, my best friend all the way through school, his dad owned a junkyard, so that's what we did.
Yeah.
we worked on engines. We drove junk cars. It was just. I don't know. I guess I was just blessed enough to enjoy mechanics, I guess is what it was. Mm-hmm. So, and getting my hands dirty didn't bother me, so that was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's how it all started with myself as far as being a mechanic, working in a junkyard.
My dad was a mechanic his whole life, and he was just telling me the other day, I didn't even know this, that's exactly what he did. The guy in his street had a junkyard, and he would go over there and set it. So, I'm sure that's a very similar story to a lot of guys. But yeah, right? You just take stuff apart. You can't hurt anything, so you do it fearlessly, and that's how you learn.
And his dad's business was out in the country, and he had, I don't know, 40 acres or something like that. So sometimes you get these old junk cars and it still ran. So Junior and I went out in the back and raced our cars around. until they didn't run anymore.
Oh my gosh, what a great toy box for a young guy, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow,
I was
cool.
just lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
So,
when you went to Mercury, what was your capacity when you first got there? Were you did you go right into engine building, or you were just in
well, yeah, yeah. It was there was Mercury's performance division was split up. There was the 2-cycle and the 4-cycle,
hmm
and obviously I went to work in the 4-cycle division, and uh, and the guy that I worked for, Wayne Myers, and he was oh, I want to say he was a very nice guy, but he was a there was no bullshit.
hmm
Okay. If he saw you standing there talking to the guy in the bench next to
hmm
you,
hmm
he'd tell you this is not a social club. Get the fuck to work, you know.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that and basically what I did in my first probably 6 months or so there is I rebuilt cylinder heads
Hmm.
because, and at the time, Mercury, there wasn't any other offshore engine
hmm
builders in the world. I
hmm
mean, that was Mercury supplied engines to all over the world, Europe and every place were
hmm
all Mercury engines. And boy, I'll tell you what, I think I can't remember exactly, but it seems like a brand new engine from taking the block out of the box to finish going to the dyno, it took 32 hours.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the engines were very, very simple engines
hmm
too. I
hmm
mean, you know, GM blocks actually used TK for rods, and I can't remember where the cranks came from. But in all the cylinder heads, there was no such thing as an aluminum head back
hmm
then.
hmm
All the cylinder heads were GM. All the valves were TRW. It was a pretty simple
hmm
engine, but
hmm
but it was also the only engine that was built for offshore racing
hmm
back then. So yeah, so that was quite a place there, and then eventually, I think the year or so before I left Mercury, um, see that shop was in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and that's where actually TK for Mercury was originally
hmm
too.
hmm
And then they moved the offshore or the 4-cycle shop up to Oshkosh, and everything was in sort of one complex
mm
there. But and Gary Garbrecht was a his whole oh, his focus was the outboard boats, the Formula boats.
mm hmm
And
hmm
boy, and if he had had the focus on the 4-cycle end of things like he had on that end, it would have been a totally different business. I can tell you.
Yeah.
And Mercury was very, very successful in those running those tunnel boats back then. It
hmm
was pretty amazing.
hmm
So that was that's what I did when I started working there, and then eventually I got moved up into the engine building area, and I built engines, and but like I say, compared to the stuff that we did in the '90s,
Yeah. Right.
those
Right.
those engines, you wouldn't have put them in your pickup truck. So, but anyway, that's what that. But back then there was nothing else available
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah.
you know,
I'm curious,
and,
and this might be kind of an obscure question, but being that it was a big corporate setting, right? Did you guys have were like, you know, SOPs or instructions on how you built quote unquote race engines? Or did you
well, except for the standard procedure that was put in place there. No, there
Yeah.
was nothing written down any
Yeah.
place as
Yeah.
far as how you did anything. You were told what to do and how to do it, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
anyway,
Yeah, it would
uh,
have yeah, definitely I'm sure in the later years was done a lot differently, but
oh geez, yeah, the engines that were built in the late '90s for when they still had 500 cubic inch limit, and there was everything was built under UIM rules, which is a international governing body, and I don't even know if they're around anymore.
Oh yeah, they are.
That was but the thing was so good about that is there was one rule, 500 cubic inches, and that was it. Nothing, everything else was open, and it left your mind could do things and think about things and do things without worrying about having to worry about somebody taking out a book and saying this is the wrong screw here or whatever, But that was a very good time for offshore racing, I think. And then they started all that spec racing and the 4-engine boats and all that kind of stuff. And I did some of that stuff. I did some Joe Mock's 4-engine crew that he had, Dirty Laundry. I did his engines but it wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't the same anymore,
Yeah.
So,
I think, I talked to Jerry Gilbert a couple weeks ago, and he kind of was saying the same thing. Like he just loved when you could, the rule book was small, and, he's like, that's how he made a living, just figuring out, what you could do that the rule book didn't address, and.
There was one rule, 500 cubic inch, max.
Yeah.
So that's pretty easy there. And Jerry, I got my inspiration for doing my product line of my own parts and things like that through Jerry's dad, Jake Gilbert.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you ever were associated with him or not, but Jake was the first one to come out, other than Mercury, and build oil pans and exhaust and things like that. Other than that, the only people that had anything for big block Chevrolet race engines was Mercury, and so he kind of inspired me because I saw what he was doing, and I said, "Well, we can do that," So I had a real nice product line for a long time. I sold more parts than I did engines, so and that was good.
Yeah.
And Jerry raced a lot of times competitively with what I did, and so it was good. Yeah.
So you're at Mercury for like 4 years. I mean, you must have really learned a lot if you were able to leave there to go be employed by build race engines for private teams.
Well, I did learn a lot, and what I learned more than anything else was discipline and hard work. And that was a big plus for me, because a lot of times the race guys would come into the shop and they'd see you working and whatever. And one of the guys that actually was in charge of getting me moved to Florida was Harold Smitty Smith. You ever come across his name?
I've heard that name.
Okay, Smitty was probably, in my opinion, one of the most detail-oriented throttle guys in the world. I mean, he had a checklist that was like 4 pages long. He went through a race. I mean, everything was on a checklist. Everything was done, and he was a great throttle man. He throttled for. I actually throttled for Rocky Aoki in the Benihana boat.
Okay.
And then he also throttled for. Went to Europe and did raced for a lot of people over there, and that got me into the European market.
Okay.
And I did lots of engines for Europe for quite a few years, and it was good, But that a lot of that came from Smitty.
Okay.
And Smitty was he's the one that got me to Florida in the first place, and then unfortunately he passed away way too young. But anyway, he was a really good throttle man.
That's probably what I've read about him.
Yeah.
So did you, when you left Mercury, when you went to work for those guys, did you open your own shop, or are you kind of just doing motors for a couple guys
Well, they had
exclusively?
Preston Hen, the guy that raced the natural light boat, owned a swap shop down in Fort Lauderdale.
Hmm.
It was called the Thunderbird Swap Shop, and that's where we put the race engine shop was inside his building. That was a swap shop.
Interesting.
We'd be in there working on engines, and there's people standing in the glass doors looking in there. But it was great. I was able to put my own dynamometer in,
Oh, nice.
so that was a big plus too, and that was in 1977. So I left Mercury in 76 at the end of 76 and moved down there, and then we put the shop together there, and it was just myself and another guy, but we built engines for those two boats, and then as things went along, other people came along, and then uh, Rocky and Preston sort of went on their own ways, and they weren't racing anymore, and so that's when, I don't know if you remember the name or have come across the name, Jerry Jacobi
Okay.
and Bob Saccenti.
I know, I've heard of Bob Saccenti, definitely. Yeah.
Uh, Bob Saccenti, Jerry Jacobi, and myself opened up Hawk Marine Power,
Okay. Gotcha. I've definitely heard of
and
Hawk.
that's where Hawk Marine Power came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there I built a lots of engines for a lot of different, and for not only for open class, but a lot of the sport class and the modified class, and there was three different, and those were all small blocks. So we did small blocks and big blocks there,
Mm-hmm.
and was real successful with it too. So
Mm-hmm.
won world championships with all three of those, open class, sport class, and
Mm-hmm.
modified
Mm-hmm.
class. So and that was at Hawk Marine Power, and
Gotcha.
that I was there for, let me see, I think 3 or 4 years, and then the opportunity came along for me to move out of Miami, which I was happy about, and move up to North Florida to St. Augustine, Florida, and that's where the shop was put in, and it was KS&W.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, I was going to ask though with Hawk. So is Mercury basically your biggest competitor? Is that who you guys are competing against?
Well, I guess you could call them a competitor. They didn't win many races then anymore.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I and this is I probably shouldn't even say this, but Don Arenal,
Uh
I'm
huh.
sure you're
Sure. Uh
you're
huh.
familiar with that name. He came into the shop at Hawk Marine, and him and Jacobi were pretty good friends. And because Jerry Jacobi raced a 37-foot cigarette. So anyway, he came in and he said he wanted to order a couple of engines. And I'm like, why would Don Arenal buy two engines from us?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, thinking about it, and as I'm putting the engine together, it struck me that this engine is going to Mercury Marine.
Oh my gosh.
So when before I put the oil pan on, I wrote a little note on the windage tray. And I still had friends that worked at Mercury.
Yeah.
And when they took that oil pan off, he said everybody just scattered.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I think I heard this story from somebody. What you want to disclose what the note said?
Well, I said, hello, Mercury. If you can't beat them, copy them.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
And,
fantastic.
and I got to tell you, Mercury, for in the 80s and 90s, Mercury Marine did not win many
Mm-hmm.
races.
Mm-hmm.
In the 90s, it was myself and Mike Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 80s, it was basically myself that was really all three classes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we did really, really successful
Mm-hmm.
with that. So, and at KS&W, we had some really, really high-level boats too. The Arneson boat was there, and the collection boat was there, and the Seahawk boats, and so it was a pretty darn good selection of race teams there.
Well, early on, Kiefer was pretty successful with his engine program too when he left
Oh, he
Mercury.
was. Yeah. Between what we were doing and what Kiefer was doing, Mercury was kind of left by the wayside. And I'll be real honest with you. If it hadn't been for some of the engineering people at Mercury, I'm not so sure I wouldn't have retired from Mercury. But they were bean counters. They didn't know a roller camshaft from a push rod. And it was but they were engineers. And obviously I can't say that I thought I knew everything, but I certainly knew, just from my experience as a hot rodder and a car guy, I certainly knew that what they were doing wasn't the right way to do it. So, but and that was my biggest reason for leaving too. So
yeah.
But and if the right people had been in charge and the engineering would have been what I thought it should have been, Mercury was a damn good place to work. It had great benefits and pay was good. But anyway, that's that.
Yeah, I got you. Well, and you couldn't complain about the cool stuff, right? Doing nothing but boats and race motors.
Right. Yeah.
How did it work? How did it work back then? As far as, again, I talk about competitors when you were at Hawk or KS&W. Like, did you have to go out and sell to these guys, or did you guys each did Dan about Sterling? Did he just kind of have his guys and you had your guys?
I never went any place and tried to sell anybody anything.
Yeah.
What we did, sold our stuff,
and
that was all. And I don't remember anybody ever coming to us or me to buy an engine and asking how much it costs. So, I was I was very fortunate to be able to have, some of the people that work for me and work with me were just dedicated, good people. And without that, I could have done it, but I couldn't have done it to the level I did. That's for sure. So anyway,
moving out of Miami, doing a little bit of research on you. Obviously, you hung with the Bobby Saccentis, and I saw pictures with Ben Kramer. You did some stuff for him. It's like, so that was probably a good move for you, right? To get out of the middle of all that stuff.
Well, yeah, and I will, and I'm sure a lot of people have opinions, but I can tell you that when I was 21 years old, I got arrested for a DUI. The judge put me in jail for 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was in let me see, it would have been 21 years old. It would have been 1964. And at the time, I wanted to murder that judge. I can tell you that. But I thanked him so many times because I made myself a promise that I would never, ever do anything again that would put me in jail. And I lived by that for the rest of my life. And I there's a lot of people that I work with or work for that I never got involved with them. I went and did my job. They weren't my friends. I didn't hang out with them. I didn't socialize with them. And I just, because I just could not let myself get in a position where I was going to someday have to go to jail.
Yeah.
So it was that judge in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I thanked him. I can't even tell you how many times.
Yeah.
And when I got out of the jail for 30 days, that's when I went and joined the Army.
Oh, good call.
I said, there's no way, because I also lost my license for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I said, there's no way that I'm not going to drive for a year, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going back to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down and joined the Army, and that was the second best thing I ever did in my
Yeah.
life.
Had to go find something to do since you couldn't drive, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in my army experience was great. And again, I went in with the understanding that I'm going to do what I'm told to do, and I'm not going to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I was again very fortunate to be able to be in the right place at the right time. And within 2 years, I was a sergeant. So
Mm.
I don't know. I just been have had real good luck, and I guess it's all luck. I don't know. But yeah, so that was my experience and as far as the people that I worked for or worked with, sometimes they were never in the shop anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those people were never part of the engine building business.
Mm.
They were just people that were. When Bobby Saccenti had his own little business, he did rigging and things like that. Jerry Jacobi, his business was in New York, the Ajax Transmission Company, and of course the KS&W, Sale and Willie, and all those guys. You know, I don't know to this day exactly what they all did, but I
Mm-hmm.
know I,
Yeah.
I know that I kept myself in the position of not being able to worry, not having to worry
Mm-hmm.
about what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, it all worked out good for
Yeah.
me. So,
No, you know, when you first said that, like 30 days, because you're thinking, there's first time offender, let's slap on the wrist,
yeah.
but you know what? I mean, that's certainly a good case for coming down hard the first time, right?
Well, and I'll tell you what the judge said to me. My buddy got a DUI about a month before I did. He went in and paid his $100 fine, so I had $100 in my pocket. I'm ready to walk out of there. And the judge looks at me and said, "This is a pretty colorful driving record you have here." He said, "I think I'm going to give you 30 days to think about it."
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So, and again, that day, if I'd had a gun in my pocket, I probably would have shot him.
Yeah.
But, and I'll say it again, I think that judge so many times. Red Crane.
No, you remember the judge. That's awesome.
I remember him like it was yesterday.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Great story. Great story.
yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something else. I probably should have said it earlier. I Googled you a little bit, and the number of time, I mean, pages come up, and it's a boat for sale with Keith Eickert 800 horsepower motor, or a race boat, Keith Eickert. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's like it seems to me like you put a motor in every offshore boat built for the last like 30 years. It's kind of crazy.
We did a lots of race boat engines, lots of them.
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's just I guess because of the quality of work we did is what
Mm-hmm.
brought us the business.
Yeah.
There was no advertising. There was none of that stuff. I don't know. I don't. And the computer stuff and I are completely disconnected. So, but anyway.
In a playing field with offshore boats, I don't know, we'd have to think about it, but one of the most abusive avenues to put a motor in, you can't fake it, right? So you were doing something right, or you wouldn't have that kind of repeat business. Like, you just can't fake it. You got to perform, and you got to last, and
Yeah.
so obviously
Yeah.
your reputation and history.
And yeah. And back then, offshore racing was offshore racing.
Yeah.
You didn't run around in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
You ran out in the ocean and you run around a checkpoint. You went to the next checkpoint. And the race, to be a UIM sanctioned race, it had to be a minimum of 150 miles.
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
Yep. UIM sanctioned race was a minimum of 115 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like today where they run around in a circle for a half hour or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a totally different thing. It was,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there was a lot involved in the not only the engines but the preparation of the boat and the teams and all that. That was
Mm-hmm.
a pretty involved process back then. So
Yeah, and I can't imagine the abuse. Obviously, with bigger water, you're not running the stuff, flat on the floor all the time. But there were times, and with the amount of launching, and it just had to.
oh yeah,
I
yeah,
can only imagine like some of the explosions you've seen.
yeah,
So it's got to be incredible.
yeah, yeah. And I, you know, I can't say I've never seen a broken engine come back, but it was rare. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
anyway,
And it sounds like
yeah.
I saw somewhere. I mean, when you were at KS&W for a couple of years, like you guys were really successful.
Yes, yes. We had a very successful time there, and like I said, it wasn't just open class. There was we built engines for three different classes,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the Arneson boat, the collection boat, and the KS&W boats. And we did engines for people that didn't work out of the shop too. So
Hmm. Hmm.
but it was a quite a really a nice facility because
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
could bring your boat there, you could take care of you did your maintenance there, you did
Oh, okay.
everything,
Hmm.
everything was done in the shop.
Hmm.
So there wasn't I can't say there wasn't any, but there was and at the same time we were doing a lot of engines for Europe too.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
and that was very successful for
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
So.
Was Bobby Saccenti, was he with you at KS&W? Who was with you at KS&W?
No, no, just
Just
myself
you. Okay.
and myself and Milton Morizumi. He worked with me at in South Florida also,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then he moved up there with me. And
Hmm.
then I hired a couple of kids out of the vocational school in St. Augustine.
Hmm.
That and the one kid, Chris, he was with me for over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Got a good one there.
yeah, and people that showed up for work every day, and I had a couple guys working for me there too that were actually ex Mercury employees, Dave Hewitt and there was three of us that were actually former Mercury employees that
Hmm.
came to work for me at KS&W.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
it was good. It was a really and it was a and 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 the guy that did all of my engineering, uh, and he was not he didn't have a certificate that said he was an engineer,
Hmm.
but I've never met anybody as smart as him in my whole life. His name is Steve Oliver,
Hmm.
and he works for Gibbs up in the Carolinas on one of the race car
Oh, no
teams.
kidding.
Yeah, and Steve was just a huge asset for
Hmm.
me, and so was Chris and Glenn and a lot of the guys that worked
Hmm.
for me, Maury, and they were all good people,
Hmm.
and everybody showed up for work, and we, back then there wasn't anything about who's doing drugs. There wasn't any drugs.
Hmm. Hmm.
It just didn't. It just never crossed anybody's mind there to do
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So
What a statement to the state of things now when you just keep emphasizing they showed up for work. They showed up for work. That's almost like a
yeah.
big deal now, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. If I had to try to do today what I did back then, it couldn't be done.
Hmm.
You could not do it.
Hmm.
You just couldn't. You couldn't find the people that are show up for work every
Hmm.
day and do their job and not complain. And yeah, I mean, it was. I was very lucky to have those people working
Hmm.
for me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. So then after KS&W, I think you ended up over at Apache, started a shop, or you're doing something with
yes,
Apache?
yes, I went to work for Ben Kramer down in
Hmm.
South Florida.
Oh, you went back. How come you did that?
Ah, well, I just had a feeling that I mean, I loved the guys that Sal and Willie and all those guys. They were all good people. I loved them. I got along real well with them, but I just had that feeling that things were not going to go real well in the next, there was a lot of rumblings around, and I never was concerned about it on a personal basis, but I didn't want somebody walking in the door and saying, we're closing you up here.
Gotcha.
So I took, and Ben, I was doing some work for Ben when I was at KS&W, and Ben, I didn't know Ben Kramer from beans. Ben Kramer called me to come down and talk to him about going to work for him and building his engines. And I thought, he had Apache, he owned Apache and all that. And I thought, well, it'd be pretty neat. And I just have to do engines for one boat. Well, that didn't last long. So anyway, that's what happened. And I went to work for Ben. And Ben and I always got along pretty good. I was in his office for the interview the first time, and he had Bobby Saccenti. Him and Bobby were kind of partners in Apache. And he had Bobby Saccenti in his office, and he was reaming him an asshole.
When you saw this when you went for the interview?
Yeah, I'm sitting out there listening to this, and I'm going, oh, wow. So anyway, Bobby comes out. I go in there and I said to Ben, one thing I want to get straight right now before we even say a word with each other. If you ever talk to me like that, I said, all you're going to do is see me packing up my tools and leaving. Yeah. And so we had that right from the first day. And we never had a problem. So
that was another blessing in disguise there, right?
Yeah. So anyway, but then of course he went away, or and the same thing with Ben that happened with KS&W. Things were going, a lot of rumors. And I said, I got to do something because this isn't going to last. Yeah. So then I started with Gil Lieber and Ray Waddell. We started Lightning Performance, and then we did lots of engines there too. So
now I'm a California guy, Keith. So I have to tell you, I'm focused on the California West Coast stuff, and I know a little bit about what's going on in offshore, but I'll never forget the day, and I don't know if it was a Miami boat show, but something, and I got my hands on a Lightning Performance Products catalog, and I'm like,
okay,
my gosh. It was, and I was at Rex Marine at the time, so we were doing some billet stuff, but nothing like that. So that's kind of where that started, right? Started building the parts.
Well, actually, it started quite a way before that, but that's when we really went into the manufacturing of lots of stuff, and that's where the initial first ever two-stage sea pump came from.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And you know what happened there is I was building some supercharged engines for Al Copeland at Lightning, and we decided that the single stage or the single water pump just was not adequate to service horsepower rating like that. So we had a sea pump mounted on each side of the front of the engine. And I'm like, Steve, why don't we just make a two-stage pump just like you do with oil pumps? Yeah, great. So so that's where the very first two-stage pump, and then it progressed from two-stage to three-stage, and there's even some four-stage stuff out there now.
Oh, interesting.
But that's where that first multi-stage sea pump thing came from. But yeah, we did a lot. We had exhaust systems. We had, valve covers, intake systems. We did a lot of different products there. It was a really good experience. Yeah.
I want to know something about the exhaust manifolds. So I know at one point, and I don't know how Dennis Parvey was involved in those exhaust manifolds. And I saw those at some point. You were advertising those. Was that like your design, or did you build them?
No, that was Dennis Parvey's design.
Okay.
And and he was having problems getting them manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Dennis, I like Dennis a real lot. He's a good guy and a very smart guy. And so I was talking to Dennis, and he said, would you be interested in taking it over? And I said, well, yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I worked out a deal with him. I paid him X amount of dollars for each set of manifolds that we sold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that all came from.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great exhaust manifold. Matter of fact, Innovation Marine tested it with every header on the market at the time, and outperformed every one of them. So, yeah, and I don't even know whatever happened to it. I think last I heard, some guy in Delaware owns it now.
Yes, there's a guy, and I can't think of Bill's name, but he owns a company called Diamond Marine.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and somehow he ended up with it. I don't know if Dennis just let him use it, or if he bought it.
I wound up selling it to Carson Brummett.
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Carson Brummett bought the system from me, and then he was having problems getting it manufactured, and so he wound up selling it to the guy in Delaware. Oh, and he's having problems too. So anyway, it's a fairly complex casting, and if I had to do all over again, I would do it totally different. But in any case, we were real successful with it, and it ran real good. And there was just the problem with it is there was a lot of scrap involved, and when the foundry pours the manifold, I don't care if it's scrap or it's good, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, that's what happened to that. But it was Dennis Parvey did the original, all the original design on that. It was a great manifold.
Yeah, it was. And that's one of the first time I saw it. That's like the first thing I thought of, like, boy, the tooling for this has to be pretty elaborate.
Yeah. And I'm not so sure that after so many headers that were built and they started having problems, that the tooling probably should have been redone right then and there. But I don't think anybody ever redid the tooling. But and that's the reason everybody's having trouble making them. So,
Gotcha. I was curious.
Now the way Stainless Marine does it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
They cast the runners and then weld the water jacket. And that's what we should have done. So, but anyway, yeah.
Did you make the 2-piece valve covers too?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually have a patent on that. The 2-piece valve cover. Yeah. Now I've done another design of the two-piece valve cover that I have now. That's a better system, but I'm not selling parts anymore.
That got me all peaked. I'm like, wow, are you still selling parts? No.
Yeah, I just I don't. There's some products that I have laying on my shelf that I've come up with and done, and I'm just not. I'm not in the mood for sitting and talking to somebody on the telephone all day. So I just have not pursued it at all. If I had somebody that would, take interest in this stuff and want to manufacture it and sell it, I would like to do that, but I'm not going to do that. Anyway, so
I didn't really track a lot more history than what we've already talked about, but I know at some point, did you sell Lightning or CP Performance? There was some kind of deal with CP Performance, and I don't know if you want to talk about that or what kind of deal that was. But
that was a very bad thing for me. That was and CP came along after Julie Sullivan.
Oh, okay. I wasn't even going to mention Julie Sullivan.
Well, and that was the beginning of my ending. Julie Sullivan, and then came along CP Performance, and I thought Scott and Mike were my friends, but I learned the hard way. So that was the Hard Marine.
Wow.
And they were still using my name.
Yeah. Were you able to get them to stop using your name?
I just walked away from it,
Mm.
and Joe, and I just never ever I've not talked to either one of them since.
Mm.
You know, that was a hard thing for me, and it still is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. And I don't wish anybody any bad luck, but on the other hand,
Well,
one day it'll come around.
yeah. What do they call that? Karma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and when you mentioned California being your home base and
Mm-hmm.
everything, do you remember? I don't even know if you'd have been. How old are you?
I'm 63.
Okay, you may not remember, but the boats in California, Dante's Inferno.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember that. Yeah.
I raced in that boat in Key West when I worked for Mercury,
Really?
and you know what?
Huh.
Willie Myers drove, and Wayne Vickers throttled, and I
Okay.
was third. I was the third guy.
Uh-huh.
And as we're racing in Key West, I mean, you can run around, like I said, in a circle. We went out to, I don't even know where they went, but, you know, there's another boat side by side. And for one minute, you're looking at the bottom of that boat, and the next minute, you're looking down at it. And I said to myself, about halfway through the race, I said, and Joe, I wanted to be a race boat driver so bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And about halfway through the race, I said to myself, you better pay attention to engines, because you're not gonna be a boat racer.
Well, that's funny because I as we got talking, I'm like, I wanted to ask you that question. How come you never ended up in a boat? But I guess there we go.
One time,
Uh-huh.
and and uh, Ben Kramer used to want me to go with him and test.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I'm not getting in a boat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do it. I just remember that one experience, and I didn't get hurt or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but boy, I didn't like it at all.
Talking about, that open ocean stuff too. It's like,
Yeah.
I, I yeah, when I think about that stuff, I don't know if people have any idea that those freaking guys are just insane. That
Oh,
they
yeah,
drive those boats
yeah,
that fast. And I don't know if
yeah,
people have any idea the sense. I mean, we have just our little island here, Catalina, and I've been over there a few times in small boats, and I've been scared to death going
yeah,
70 miles an
yeah,
hour. Like I can't even
yeah,
imagine. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't blame you. I'm sure there's a lot more people that you don't hear that story. That's just there's no way I'm getting in that boat.
I gotta tell you, I was so glad that I was able to go though, because I'm telling you, oh man, I wanted it so bad to be a boat
Hmm.
racer,
Hmm.
working for Mercury, and I was still working for Mercury at the time, and and I said to myself, you better not worry about boat racing. You better pay attention to building engines.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no,
So
that was a good choice. That was a good
yeah,
choice.
and then of course Howard Arneson, he was a real good customer for a lot of
Hmm.
years,
Hmm.
and so that was a good
Yeah, for a West
experience.
Coast guy, yeah. Boy, he sure set the world on fire with his stuff, huh?
Oh yeah, he sure did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was going to ask you because at some point you got into I don't know if it was partnership or you ended up working with Don Onken, and then I saw you did your V16, and I don't know how
yeah,
those if those kind of went hand in hand or.
yeah, 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 yeah. I was still in, and this was after. Let me see. This was after my agreement with Scott and Mike at CP.
Hmm.
I was still working in the shop down there because we were actually still friends because the 5 years wasn't up, and I didn't. So, but anyway, uh, Don, he bought some stuff from me when I was in Palm Coast, and as things went along, we got to be, we talked quite often, and he asked me if I would like to come up there and go to work for him. And I said, well, why not?
Hmm.
So I went up there, Joe, and Don Eastern Illinois is about, I don't know, population of maybe 500 or something like that.
A little bit of culture shock.
Yeah, and Don bought, when they consolidated the school systems up there, he bought the school in Easton. And so the school became the engine shop.
Oh my gosh.
It was beautiful. I mean, it was hard to explain. I mean, we had two dynos. We had a shop where he brings his boats right inside, and then the engine shop was I don't know. It was probably, I don't know. It was, I want to say, probably 50 by 150. And just now he bought all the equipment that I had in Palm Coast.
All the engine equipment, machines and stuff.
All the engine equipment, the Hones, the dyno, he bought all that stuff, and we moved it all up there. And I went to work for Don, and we worked on that V16 project hand in hand. And of course, I had the connections to be able to get all the pieces made to put the two engines together, and to be able to do all the tuning and everything with them electronically. And boy, that to this day, I just wonder why that has not caught on. It's such a simple system, and I mean, you could put a couple LS small blocks together and make 1,500 horsepower, run it on pump gas, and they'd last forever. All we did is hook the two engines together, nose to tail. And of course, what we did is we fired the front engine fired on number 1, and the rear engine fired on number 6 at exactly the same time. So the engines ran as one engine. In other words, there wasn't one engine firing at 40 degrees in the front and one engine firing at 30 degrees in the back. It ran as one engine. And it ran he set the record up there. How many? 6 years in a row at Lake of the Ozarks.
I've talked to Don a few times. I never really realized. So that's what he's been using this whole time. He's been using that setup.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Gotcha. So basically, they acted like the 16 cylinders acted kind of together.
Yeah.
And then how did you manage it? What was it, like a Motec system, or how did you?
Yeah, it was a Holly system.
Okay.
Yeah, but it would fire two cylinders at once. And so it was just a matter of separating them, so the one engine in the back and front engine were firing one cylinder on each engine exactly the same time. It was just offset. And it worked. And now I think he bought some of the Mercury overhead cam engines. He got a hold of them from somebody. I don't know who. And that's what I think he's putting in the boat now. But as a 16.
Yeah, he ran 2 of them, but he's trying to reverse rotate the other 2, and I don't think he's having luck with that.
No, he's not having luck at all with that.
Yeah. Well, all that proprietary stuff and those things that had to be.
Yeah.
So, well, that's interesting.
And I think last time I talked to him, we talked fairly often, and I think he's still planning on this year going back with 2 of the Mercury engines and 2 of the big blocks again this year.
Okay.
So, and that sounds weird, but he made it work.
I talked to him. I don't know if it was before or right after the shootout, and he told me that, and I'm like, how is that going to work? He's like, well, we've gone before with different power on a side, and it's, it works out okay. And obviously it worked out okay.
Yeah. So Don is quite a guy.
Yeah. So how was that? Like we talked earlier about, you liked when it was just 500 inches and I didn't have to think about anything else. You kind of were in the same place, right? It was like unlimited anything with that boat, with the shootout boat.
Yeah. It didn't. Yeah. Now we didn't get we didn't get real wild with the things. I mean, if you're making 5,000 horsepower, you don't have to get too crazy.
Yeah, that's true, I guess, huh?
So it was, they were supercharged, and they were actually used the Vortex superchargers, and they worked out really well. So anyway, but yeah, so you didn't have to get real exotic with anything. The biggest thing was getting everything to work together. We had to make special water pumps and to feed both engines and all that. And the biggest thing was getting the double drive plates put together on the back engine, because the back engine was actually driving the boat. So all that had to be worked out. But and at the time when that was done originally, a guy that I worked with for years in drive plates and flywheels and stuff, Steve McAllister, did all that for me. And he was an ex-Manley employee that I knew for I don't know how many years, but he went into the business of making flywheels and drive plates and stuff like that. So I was lucky to be able to have somebody that could do that for me, and everything was made with the idea of having the engines as one engine, really. So it all worked out real well, and Don has been very, very successful with it. I think he's got the record for the fastest gas powered boat in the world. So.
And I know this last year, he was telling me that the goal was to go with it, because they shortened the course a few years ago to 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah.
So now he's going as fast in 3/4 as he
Yeah,
was in a mile.
yeah, he is. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. They shortened the course after Mike Fiore died up there, and Mike was a good guy too. I liked him. We did a lot of engines for Mike Fiore. So. It's been a lot of fun, Joe.
Yeah,
it really has.
Well, I mean,
I've met so many nice people, and a lot of the people that I was involved with in Europe were such good people, and I actually went to my one customer over there took me to the Lamborghini factory, and I was at the Lamborghini factory, and that was when who was the guy from Chrysler that they bought Lamborghini back then? I can't remember the name. But I was there the day before he got there, and I saw the new Countach Lamborghini before he did.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And at one point, I don't remember when in your career, but at one point you were marinizing those, right? The Lamborghini V12s?
Yes. Yeah. Matter of fact, Ben Kramer in his catamaran had two Lamborghinis. The one, the Mike Peters cat that Ben had, that had two Lamborghinis in it that we built in the shop in North Miami.
You were like the original guy that did those? How'd that come about?
Well, I'm not real sure. I know Lamborghini wanted to get into the marine end of things, and they had that 500 cubic inch, 90 degree or 60 degree V12. That they put in one of their, looked like a off-road something or other. But anyway, so then my customer, Walter Ragazzi, took me to the Lamborghini factory, and we talked about, how we'd go about doing all that, and it worked out no problem. So
wow.
So that's how all that happened. But and I think about that today, Joe. I'm not so sure that if you had that base engine and you really did some work on it, that couldn't be a really, really good marine engine. But it never got that far. But I think it could have. So,
that's interesting. That's fantastic. You got to go over there and see it and talk to him.
Oh yeah. And then they sent parts and they sent engines, and Ben was going to be the sole distributor for the Lamborghini V12 in the United States. And then at that time there was some problems with him and whatever, so it didn't really come out too good.
Yeah.
But in any case, no
Yeah.
big deal.
Interesting. Today, after all these years and doing all this, what's your flavor of choice? If a guy comes to you and says, "Hey, I want 1,000 horsepower reliable," Keith, tell me however you want to do it, Keith. I'll do it your way.
1,000 horsepower?
That's a number that you probably have to use a power adder on, so that's why I say that, right?
I just, there's a lot of different superchargers out there. There's the fan style. There's the turbochargers. The simple old GMC style supercharger makes the power, and it's so simple and it doesn't break.
Gotcha.
Go to the blower shop, you buy a 1071, you put it on a 540, and you make 1,000 horsepower without even trying.
Gotcha. Well, there you go. You heard it right there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of reputable guys out there still today, but the guy that wants 1,000 or 1,500 horse, which, by the way, I've talked about this a few times. I mean, that's the new 500 horsepower, right? Like everybody's got 1,500 horsepower anymore.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when a guy, besides picking up a speedboat magazine, or obviously we've got Teague, there's a lot of big names out there. Was a guy when he makes that phone call on that engine and he wants to talk about building that power, what's some questions that a guy should look for or ask an engine builder, or what's from the other side of the fence? How do you steer a guy into making sure he's got the right guy?
As far as the engine builder goes?
As far as an engine builder. If I want to buy that motor, who?
Boy, I'll tell you what, I don't know. I really don't know what to tell you on that. There's not really a lot. Bob Teague and I are about the same age. And when I worked for Mercury, I met Bob Teague when he was racing with Nordscog out in California. Okay, now I don't think I can't think of anybody else. Well, Mike Annabelle, Bob Teague, and myself, as far as really experienced marine engine builders.
Yeah, maybe. What about Carson Brummett?
Carson Brummett, yeah. But and Carson just does his turbo stuff, and I that's fine. But I don't know. There's not a whole lot of people of course, I don't know. I don't deal with it anymore. So I'm sure that there's some young guys out there that could do the job. But I think you run into the same problem that we talked about initially. How do you put a shop together nowadays and get people to do the job? What I'm doing here now, I'm the parts cleaner, I'm the disassemble guy, I'm the assemble guy, I'm the painter. If I had to go to try to hire somebody to do this stuff here, I couldn't do it, And I don't know what you do nowadays, to be real honest with you. And that's the reason I think that probably Mercury has probably pretty much taken over that whole market. I think. And because there's really no. Well, Bob Teague's still doing it.
And of course, Norm. Yeah, Norm.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say not Bob, but Norm.
Wait, I don't think you're supposed to say that.
Well, guess what? I know who's building the engines at Teague's, and it's not Bob Teague. I can tell you that.
But back to your labor, I think seriously, I think most of these guys that are doing that, they're doing what you're doing, or they got 2 or 3 guys. They don't have big crews, which is why it takes you 4 or 5 or 6 months to get anything anymore.
Well, and the other side of that problem is not only the people, but the vendors that are supposed to be making the parts. If you called Dart today and wanted to buy a pair of aluminum heads, they do not have any. Period.
Still to this day?
Not one cylinder head do they have.
Wow.
Okay. And I don't know if you know what happened there, but it's kind of a neat story.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know Bud when he was at Dart at all?
I do know Bud.
Bud
Yes,
Keating.
yes, I do know Bud. In fact, I know he's a good friend
Okay,
of yours.
all
In
right.
fact,
Bud,
he sent me your number at some point too, and said you got to call Keith.
yeah. Now, Bud was there after Maskins was gone.
Mm-hmm. Richard
Okay,
Maskin, right? Who was the
and
founder?
that's and it was this race winning brands came in
Mm-hmm.
and they bought the company,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that they went to the foundries and told them that they were gonna how much they were gonna pay for their
Right.
castings,
Sounds about right.
and I got the biggest kick out of this. He said the foundry called him back on Friday and said, if you want your tooling, it'll be on the curbside Monday morning.
Wow. Wow.
So they have nobody that will make any cylinder heads for
Wow.
them because they thought that they were going to dictate how much they were going to pay for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think now AFR has pretty much taken over that market.
Oh, okay.
And matter of fact, the engine that I'm working on right now has just put a new set of AFR
Mm-hmm.
heads on, nice heads.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what you use exclusively now.
Yeah, well, when I don't do that much
Mm-hmm.
of it, but
Mm-hmm.
this particular engine that I'm working on right now, I got AFR heads for it, and I will probably use them again. And the guy that's sort of, I'm not sure exactly what his position is there. Do you know Steve
Steve.
Arndt?
Yes, I do. Yes, and in fact, I forgot that he. I think he was at CP when
Yep,
you guys were doing that because and I went. I don't know how I found
yep.
that note, but yeah, I forgot. But yeah, I do know Steve. Yeah, and Steve's. I think.
Steve came from California,
And he was
and
at he was at
he
Teague for a
worked.
while.
No, he worked for Paul Pfaff.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, he worked for Paul, and Steve is a really, really
He
good
is.
guy. But
Yes, he is.
anyway, uh, Scott and Mike hired him, came down, and he went to work. He sat in the office and sold parts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I got to know Steve pretty well. And then Steve left there and went to Melling,
Mm-hmm.
and then from Melling went to Dart, and now he's at AFR.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Steve will do a great job, and he's a very he knows the product, and there's not too many people out there that know their products.
Yeah.
So
AFR is owned by an investment group too, and Steve works for that group. And Steve's actually the sales manager for like all their products. I think they own Vortec and they
oh
own
yeah, matter
yeah,
of fact, they just
yeah,
bought Vortec. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, Steve was at Dart.
Mm-hmm. Him and
And
Bud are good buddies. Yeah.
yeah. I gotta tell you, there I've known some people in this industry for so many years that whether you see them every day or don't see them every day, you get to be friends,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's more important than anything,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
No, you're right. And I think being in industries like small industries like hot rods or race boats, it's
yeah,
kind of a fraternity. It's kind of like
yeah,
and
yeah,
you realize.
yeah.
Well, it took me a while in my younger days to realize, but you got to realize, you're going to cross paths again. So don't burn bridges,
Oh,
and
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
you're right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that one path to get crossed. But yeah, anyway, it's I got to tell you, I've been just blessed to be able to do what I've done,
hmm
and and being a dummy that didn't even graduate from high school. Come on,
Yeah.
but I did pay attention to what I did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, obviously your early, your stories about the service and the jail time. I mean, that's talk about a PhD in hard knocks, right? You figured it out,
It, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And of course, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that think that I got millions of dollars of drug money buried someplace. And and the other thing that I always did, Joe, that I always made sure that no matter where I worked or who I worked for or with, I got a paycheck and I paid my taxes and I paid my Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And today I'm living on my Social Security check.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I, every time I see that on my bank statement, I go, yeah, there it is, right? That's why you did it now, instead of working for cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? Like those are all pretty simple life choices
Oh yeah.
right, that you made, and in the end, it's paying off. And it's just how many people don't even make those simple choices, right?
No, I know, I know. And if obviously the opportunity was probably there to get paid in cash,
Mm-hmm.
but what would I be doing now? I'd be, I don't know what I'd be doing.
Yeah, you'd be staying at the shop a lot later than you do now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that $3,000 a month from the government, I love it. And that's all I need to live.
That's awesome. Well, then there's another good choice you made to keep things
Yeah,
beneath your
yeah,
means, right?
yep, yeah. So
So
anyway,
besides building engines, Keith, what else floats your boat? What do you do for fun, or you have any fun hobbies, or
I got two dogs.
okay?
I, I love my dogs, and I've always had a buddy dog, and I've been so lucky too to be able, no matter what I was doing or where I was, to take my dog to work with me
Mm,
every day. And I just, I mean, I look at some pictures on my wall here, and I see my dogs that I had in the past, and
mm-hmm,
sometimes I get really teary-eyed looking at them, but they were my life.
mm-hmm,
And these two dogs that I have here are, gosh, they're I love them.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, but I don't have any hobbies.
Yeah.
I don't, I take care of my little property here, and I do my little whatever I do. But as far as, going fishing or golfing
Mm-hmm,
or anything like that, I just don't, I'm not, I'm not interested,
mm-hmm.
So,
And your dogs, is any particular breed you always get, or just
well, I've had in the past several different breeds. I had a few different German Shepherds that I
mm-hmm,
loved, and I had the little girl that I have right now. Her grandpa, well, I call him a grandpa, was a Shepherd and Rottweiler mix, and
mm,
that's what she is.
mm.
And believe me, I wasn't going to get another puppy. My daughter sends me a picture. Look at what I found.
Oh, you're like,
Look what I
thanks a
found.
lot.
A Shepherd Rottweiler mix, little girl that's looking for a home, and guess what?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I got her, and then I had a Shepherd and Husky, and boy, Zeke, I loved him. He was such a great dog, and you know, unfortunately, dogs don't last like they should,
Yeah,
in
I
my
know.
opinion.
I know.
But I get so attached,
Mm-hmm.
man. Of course, I'm with them every day, 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, that's
so
fun.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
fun.
But but other than that, and I've had a few hot rods. I had a really really nice hot rod that I built when I was at Lightning. It was a Monte Carlo,
Mm.
and it won the Super Chevy first place award. It won U.S. Nationals first place
Oh, nice.
award. Oh, it was a beautiful car. It was a tubbed out. It was and I built a 572. I got a block from Keith Black, an aluminum block,
Mm-hmm.
and Keith Black and I were real good friends too,
Mm-hmm.
by the way. And so I built a 572 for it, fuel EFI, and that car was just it was just a beautiful car. And
Mm-hmm.
and at the time, uh, Motor Trend took the car. No, I'm sorry, Carcraft took the car over to the racetrack, and this was in 1991. They
Okay.
took it over to the drag strip, and at the time, it was the fastest 0 to 60 car street legal
Hmm.
that was ever run.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
but that was a great car. It was
Mm-hmm.
it was fun, and I've had uh, I've had some hot rods like that. I had Another car that I liked a lot was a '57 Pontiac Safari station wagon.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, I've had some really nice cars in the past, but now I just don't care about that stuff anymore.
I had one I sold a couple years ago, and I finally just realized, like, they're a lot of work. Like, even if it's running and nice and done, there's still a lot of work. There's always
Oh
there's
yeah,
always a rattle, there's always an oil leak, there's always
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
you get up in the age where you're just like, you just don't want the hassle anymore. That's the way I see
Yeah, I'm definitely getting that way.
it.
But
Hey, so you said something about Keith Black. So, and I don't know, maybe you've got a guy of all the engine guys you know, or you've known, or you would have liked to have known. Is there a guy that you just really enjoy sitting down and talking shop with and talking motors?
Keith Black.
Yeah, just geeking out with him.
Keith Black was what a super person. As far as an engine builder, I could care less. A person, there's none better
Really?
ever.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
He was just, and when we did that V12 at Lightning, I went to, of course, Keith Black was doing a lot of blocks for me. He was doing my crankshafts for a lot of race engines. He was doing a lot of stuff for me. He made my valve covers. He made a lot of stuff for me. So, but I went out to California, and he said, before we start on this V12 big block, he said, I want you to come out here and we'll go to Ryan Falconer's and look at his V12 small block.
Oh.
So I did. Flew out to California. Keith Black put me in his airplane, flew me up to Ryan Falconer's place. And at the end of the day, I said, you know what? That's a great little engine, but it's a little engine. We want something that's a big cubic inch marine engine. And so that's what we did. And he did gosh, I can't remember. What was the engineer's guy that did the overhead cam head for crane? Richard Mosier.
Okay.
Okay, so he did all the block design work, and then we wound up getting the casting made out in California someplace. And but when we're on the way back from Ryan Falconer's place back to Southern California, and I see him, in his airplane, and he's messing around down in between his legs on the floor there. And I said, what's the problem? He said, well, I don't want you to get excited. He said, but my landing gear won't go down.
Oh, man.
But he had a mechanical pump that he was pumping it down with. He said, we'll be all right. I'm pumping it down with my mechanical pump.
And not what you want to hear from a pilot, right?
Yeah.
Nothing to get excited about, but.
Yeah, but yeah, he was just a super person. Very, very. I don't know. It's hard to explain when you get around somebody like that. That's really a prominent name in the whole industry, and to have somebody that's so nice and such a personal guy. I was amazed.
Yeah,
so
awesome. Well, kind of sounds like you probably got along, because I have a feeling you're kind of a similar type of guy.
Well, I don't know. I would sure like to be thought of as being like that, but he was just one of those people that Joe, that God, and I never ever heard Keith Black say a cuss word. Never, never once. And that's kind of unusual in this industry too. But yeah, and I've just been so lucky and had some of the great customers and some of the great throttle men in the world that run my engines, and it's been very rewarding. Yeah. Johnny Tomlinson, I'm sure you know him.
I know of him. Yes.
Yeah, and Johnny was a throttle man for Grand Buoy on Ice, and in 1999 they won every race that year. They set the speed record that year. They won the world championship and the national championship in 1999, and that was the last year for UIM sanctioned 500 cubic inch engines. So that was kind of like, I don't know, for me that was like the highlight of my
pinnacle.
whole. that was the pinnacle of my whole career
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Now you keep mentioning the throttle guy. So is that the guy that's just got the feel for, because he's on the throttles, he's the guy that can really talk to you and tell you what the power feels like and is doing? And
Oh yeah.
gotcha. Never thought about
The
that.
drivers are in most cases just drivers. We'll give them credit for being a driver, but other than that, as far as being able to do anything or run the boat or anything like that, most of them are not at all capable. So, but the throttle guys are the guys that really put it together.
Gotcha. Interesting. Cool. Well, you know what? This is only the second time I've ever spoke to you, and you just gave me an hour and a half of your time, and I really appreciate. I really appreciate it. And you've been. I wish I would have reached out to you months ago. Like I said.
Well, hey, we'll keep in touch. I'll be here.
I tell everybody that I have on this, because what usually happens is I'll for the next 3 days we'll be texting each other. I'll say, "Darn, I wish I would have asked you this," and you'll be telling me, "Oh, I wish I would have."
If there's anything else that you want to get into, just feel free.
Gotcha. Well, you do the same, and you put together a list, and if you can think of things we can talk about, yes, I'll definitely get you on. Now, do we want to tell people how to find you, or do you want to not be found?
No.
Okay.
I don't need any. I don't.
Gotcha.
Fine.
So just Google Keith Eickert and just start reading about all the boats he's been involved with and all the races, and it's amazing.
I don't. Yeah. I you know what? I'm by myself. My daughter's coming to visit me this weekend. We see each other at least once a month. But other than that, I'm good.
Gotcha. It's sure, you know what, Keith, it really sounds like it, and that's awesome. That's a real blessing. So it's a place we all aspire to get to someday. So good for you. I'm glad to hear it. So, all right, Keith, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Joe. Talk to you again.
Take care, buddy.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to Powerboat Talk. If you like what you've heard, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. For more Powerboat Talk, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website at powerboattalk.com.